Thank you very much, Reem. I also want to thank you. It's incredibly important to have people who have first-hand experience with this. You've been there, and I thank you so much for going there and so much for coming back and explaining to us what you saw. I have two questions. I'll ask one and just let you answer, and then maybe ask the other one. My first question is, how much of this do you think would be possible if the U.S. or no other large country was really funding these kind of military operations? Or maybe an easier way to look at this is, what proportion of the Israeli military operations are funded and supplied with equipment that comes directly from the United States?
I mean, I think the absolute majority of the weaponry of the funding comes from the United States. So if the United States did not have, if Israel did not have the United States backing, it would not be anything. It would not have the military might anywhere near the military might that it has today at all.
My second question is, I don't know, maybe in some ways playing devil's advocate, but I also actually really do wonder in terms of, you show these bar graphs showing, like, for instance, houses that have been hit, public locations that have been hit, but before this, did Hamas even have any real actual military targets they could hit? And I know even without real military targets, they could at least focus on sending rockets back to where they came from. They can obviously calculate the trajectories, and hitting a school where there was never a rocket launch from there is obviously bullshit. But were there very many or any real military targets?
I mean, you know, when you go, again, Gaza is beyond third world. It's not anywhere. It's not like here where you have the Pentagon, you have these very developed infrastructures. I mean, you know, Hamas, for all that you hear the hype that you hear about it, it's very, 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 very premature in its military might. They have no helicopters, they have no tanks, they have no missiles, you know, proper missiles. They have no weapons whatsoever. They don't have. I mean, they have weapons, but they don't have the weapons that you see here in the U.S. or you see that Israel has. They don't have helicopters. They don't have any of this stuff.
They didn't have any bases to really hit.
No, they don't. There's no room for bases. It's like it's so densely populated. So no, not at all. Not at all.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah, I have a question.
I think that's actually mine.
Oh, sorry.
Hi. Forgive me if this sounds a little ignorant. I'm not too familiar with this entire conflict until tonight. But you mentioned a lot about people trying to get in contact with the Israeli kind of higher command, and they're being promised aid, and then, you know, medical aid is being denied. Is this a problem that the Israelis are just lying to them, or are they just completely out of control of the kind of lower military commanders or whatnot? Is this the entire government is fully conscious of all this as it's happening, or are they just out of control of their military during this attack? Do you have any idea?
I mean, it sounds, well, I never said that, what you said specifically beforehand. I never said that they had promised aid and they didn't provide the aid. That was never part of my talk. But as far as, like, you know, basically your question, to rephrase your question, were the mishaps individual soldier mishaps, or was it an actual policy developed by the army? I think it's both. You know, the soldiers themselves are told, you know, and looking at the soldiers' accounts themselves, you know, go ahead, just your number one concern is the soldiers. You don't have to worry about civilians. Gazan, you know, like, this stuff came out of the New York Times. This is their own sayings, their own words, where they were told, whatever you do, just, you know, the Gazan lives are much, much less important than your own lives. And so there was not, you know, like, there was not on a higher level, on a higher scale. If you look at the military, it's one thing if there was a mishap, again, 1 or 2 people mishap, 2 or 3 or 4 mishaps, that's fine. But this was so wide scale, the amount of damage and the amount of destruction, the amount of deaths was so wide scale that it could not just be individuals. And if they are individuals, then it's really, the question is, what are they how are these people not being trained? Of, like, what is a civilian, what is not a civilian, what is a civilian infrastructure and what is not a civilian infrastructure, what is okay and what's not okay. But when you have such a wide scale of destruction, death, damage, etc., it's something that must be a bit, I mean, I can't answer that personally because I'm not part of the IDF, right? But the use of white phosphorus, for example. White phosphorus doesn't come from individual soldiers. That comes from higher command. That was something that's very calculated and strategic of what weapons are we going to use. Let's use white phosphorus. That's not something that you, as an IDF 18-year-old kid, can decide. That is something that Barak and Hud al-Mart and all these people, that's, or other people in the military, that's who decides that stuff. So.
Yeah. Hello, I was in Ashkelon during the operation, and we were bombed by standard Grad missiles made in Iran. So basically we're talking about the international law and proportional use of force. So basically, according to what you say, we were bombed randomly from Gaza. So if Israel bombed randomly Gaza with like rockets, it was like proportional and legal because it was the same that the Hamas did.
Whoa. Wait, so what's your question?
It was if we were bombing Gaza randomly, like the Hamas did, with the same rockets, Grad rockets. Was it legal according to the international law?